Good morning, Maddie. How are you, bud? I'm great. Thanks for asking. Everything's super on Turtle Beach. We're going to start a new book today. This one is called Expat Days. And then the publisher added a subtitle, Making a Life in Thailand by Steve Rosse. These are first-person essays about my life on Phuket, slightly glossed over for the market at the time at the direction of the editor at The Nation. And if I'm being honest, all the editors. Yeah, I had a dark streak even then. But at any rate, this book chronicles my life on Phuket, 1988 to 1997. And it's a very personal book. I'm going to try something new today. I'm going to wear my computer glasses. I used to wear these all day at work. I haven't worn them since I've been here because I got a great big monitor and I bump the fonts up. But rather than take off my glasses and show you the bags under my eyes every morning, I'm going to, this morning, try it with the computer glasses. And we begin. Expat Days, Making a Life in Thailand by Steve Rosse, all rights reserved. For Mom, Mandy, and Andy. That dedication was made in 2005 when I produced this manuscript. I think now I would add Mem, my ex-wife, to that. I have not spoken to the woman in 15 years, but hopefully I have grown a little bit. I'm not as angry as I was about the divorce and everything else. And maybe, excuse me, maybe I have grown enough as a person to say, to dedicate this reading to Mom, Mem, Andy, and Mandy. And that's got kind of a sonorous ring to it, doesn't it? I'm going to do something here. I'm going to make some room. Hang on. There we go. Hopefully the fan will leave these pages alone. Can you hear me? I'll move up. All right. Preface. I'll go ahead and read the preface on this one. In 1988, a bank holiday stranded me for 3 days in a grubby guest house in Chiang Mai. I could eat on the tab, but I only had enough cash to buy 2 packs of cigarettes and nothing else. And this was when you actually had to go to a teller at the bank and cash in a traveler's check to get money. There was, I know I was using ATMs in New York at this time. I don't remember using an ATM in Thailand in 1988. None of this is in the preface. This is an aside. So yeah, I could eat on the tab, but until the banks opened, I had only enough cash to buy 2 packs of cigarettes and nothing else. Desperate for something to do, I found in the small bookshelves that occupied a corner of the dining room a copy of Venusberg Revisited by John Cadet. I spent that long weekend reading in my room and taking slow walks around the ancient city walls, thinking about Mr. Cadet's amazing stories of Thailand. In 1993, it was my great pleasure to track down Mr. Cadet and tell him personally what a joy it was to have read his book. The stories collected in Expat Days began life in a weekly column I wrote for The Nation newspaper. The years they span and the events they describe were the most important in my life up until that time. I've done my best to make these stories shed light on a place that millions of tourists find fascinating, puzzling, and infuriating. But I'm not very concerned that a reader learns anything from this book. I just hope the book can brighten up a rainy weekend for some traveler stuck in one of those places we all seem to get stuck in whenever we pack a bag and buy a ticket. If you like these stories, you don't have to track me down and tell me so. Just leave the book behind in the dining room for the next weary pilgrim. Steve Rosse, Iowa City, March 10, 2006. So I put the manuscript together in 2006. My Life as a Dog. I have dramatized this one on my channel with a little set, a little diorama, and some little mannequins playing out the roles. But I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway. My OCD would not allow me to read this book without reading all of them. I think there will be 6 stories in this collection that I've already dramatized on this channel. But what the hell? It's my channel. I can do what I want. My Life as a Dog. The most popular man on Phuket is the new boy. Any tourist fresh off the plane, clutching a wad of purple notes and a receipt from the currency exchange bearing this morning's date, will be greeted on a red carpet and handed the key to the city by a phalanx of smiling citizens. If his skin has yet to tan and his tongue has never known curry, his friends will number more than the grains of sand on Patong Beach. He is the beloved of the bar girl, the delight of the desk clerk, and the patron of the policeman. Tuk-tuk drivers will call him brother. Renters of jeeps and motorcycles will sing his praises, and immigration will extend his visa with a nudge and a wink. Some tam vendors will leave the black crabs out of his salad without even being asked, and massage girls will actually give him a massage first. Farang who speak Thai, on the other hand, are received by the island folk in one of 2 ways. The first is with brusque disdain, as summed up by the common expression, Farang rumak mai di, or a Farang who knows a lot is no good. In this case, knowing a lot means knowing what things should cost, or knowing the phone number of the local police station and the name of the night duty officer, or knowing what it means in this society when someone clinks her glass down on top of yours in a toast. I don't know if the girls still do that. They used to, if they didn't like a punter. So they'd go in for a toast, and they would clink glasses, and they would come in like that, and they would touch the rim of his glass with the bottom of theirs, thus transferring all the filth from the top of the bar onto where he puts his mouth. And they'd smile and call him Tirak the whole while, but it's a big insult. Typically, when Thais toast, they'll go bottom to bottom, right? I suppose most people will. But sometimes they'll come in at the top like that, and it's a big insult, and it's made more fun by the fact that tourists don't recognize what's happening. So it's very Thai, very passive-aggressive. Speaking a few words of Thai, even if they're all pronounced in the middle tone with consistently long vowels, immediately puts one under a black cloud of rumak suspicion. And that makes you about as popular as the positive results of a blood test broadcast over local radio. Still, as much as we all like to be liked, the pariah status earned by asking the price of something in Thai is preferable to the second kind of response, which is known on the island as the talking dog syndrome. Imagine you're walking down Main Street back home, and you come upon a dog sitting in the shade of a lamppost. Imagine that as you pass by, you smile at the dog and you say, "Hello there, dog. How you doing, boy?" Because we all, employ baby talk to talk to animals. Imagine further that the dog looks up at you with his big brown eyes and his lolling tongue, and he replies, "Good afternoon to you, sir or madame. I am doing quite well. Thank you for asking." Well, you'd be surprised, wouldn't you? You would stop and consider this remarkable talking dog. After all, everybody in your country knows that among other traits, dogs smell bad, and we do. Dogs have terrible manners and aren't too bright, which is probably why your government requires dogs of all breeds to leave the country and renew their visas every 3 months. You'd probably start asking the dog all sorts of dumb questions just to hear him speak in that funny dog accent. How come you can speak? You would ask. How long have you been here? Do you have a girlfriend yet? You'd probably giggle when you asked that one. How much did you pay for your watch? How much do you weigh? And on and on and on. Knowing as you do, as indeed everybody in your country knows, that dogs combine their simple-minded natures with unimaginable wealth, you would probably call over all your friends to view this amazing talking dog. You'd all be very friendly to him in the hope that he might want to invest in a business with you, or buy some land from you, or at the very least, spring for dinner and drinks. All of your friends would ask the same questions you just asked and laugh delightedly at the dog's obscene mispronunciation of the word snow. Hima is snow. He-ma is dog pussy. One of your friends would rattle off a few insults. That was an aside, by the way. That's not in the story. One of your friends would rattle off a few insults to establish that if you stick to the local dialect and speak quickly, you can still talk freely in front of the dog, at which point you would all begin to discuss how big his nose is and how fat he is. Finally, you would all try to get the dog to sing a song. And maybe one of the group would shyly ask the dog if he could learn some dog language because he really wants to get a good job in one of the big hotels. Meanwhile, the dog, who is just standing there waiting for a bus, is aware that if a real human being of equal education, job title, and address were accosted in the street by a group of pushy strangers, he could call a cop or simply tell them all to get lost. But since dogs are outside the normal system of rank and privilege, they are required to observe its rules without enjoying its benefits. So the poor mutt continues to make polite, somewhat stiff conversation, praying for his bus to come soon. Just a few episodes like this, and even the most assimilated expat throws away his AUA Thai grammar book and resorts to phrases like, I want go post office, you take me 20 baht, okay? But occasionally we slip, and we should not be surprised to one day pick up the newspaper and read the headline, Local Expat Bites Taxi Driver on the Ankle. Yeah, we are outside the system of rank and privilege. We have no face to lose. We have no face to make. But you observe the rules because not observing the rules, you're sort of at a limbo. You're at an equilibrium. If you observe all the rules, you don't lose, you don't gain. But if you don't observe the rules, you lose a lot. You're painting a target on your back, honest to God. They will screw you over for a perceived slight in conversation. Use the wrong pronoun. Use gu meng pronouns with someone you're not intimate with. And they'll get you. They may wait years, but they'll get you. Best follow the rules, Maddie, right? It costs nothing to follow the rules. Easy Rider. Oh, this is a long one. This is going to take effort. Some of these were written for Phuket Magazine or other outlets. So something like My Life as a Dog, that was for The Nation, exactly 1,000 words. That's about 10 minutes to read. Some of them are longer. This is a longer one. Easy Rider. Oh, and in this book, I called Mem Wilai. Wheelie is the protagonist or the antagonist in a book called A Woman of Bangkok, which is the book that brought me to Thailand originally. It was reading that book, finding it on a movie set, and reading that book on location that brought me to Thailand the first time. The antagonist is a dancing hall hostess named Wheelie in that book. So in 2006, preparing this manuscript, I didn't want to put Mem's name in it. Still very angry. You know, the shit went down 2001 to 2003. That's when we were tearing each other apart in the courts. And 2006, it was all still very fresh. So I changed her name to Wheelie, and I'm going to go ahead and read it as Wheelie as we make our way slowly through this book. And I promise I will stop editorializing and making sidebars. Easy Rider. My wife, Wheelie, belongs to a meditation group that meets on Friday nights. I used to wait for her to leave, and then I'd sneak out to see my friends on Patong Beach. I'd make sure that I was home before Wheelie, and she usually didn't suspect a thing. But since it's easier to linger in a bar watching rugby on Star TV than it is to sit cross-legged contemplating your navel, sometimes she got home before me, and I'd have to explain myself. But then, one of Wheelie's friends said that she'd seen me in Patong one night. Wheelie asked, what was he doing? And the friend replied, he was arguing with Wide Wally about whether Woody Allen was funnier before Annie Hall or after. Wheelie realized that it's impossible for a resident expat to sneak around on Phuket, and that her husband was smart enough to know it. So now, on Friday evenings, I just put on my old denim jacket, grab my keys, kiss my wife, and hit the road. With no pressure to return at a specific hour, my nights out are much more relaxed these days. However, even though Wheelie can't stop my Friday nights out with the boys, she can still try to make sure I don't enjoy them. So last Friday, as I jumped on my motorcycle, she offered me my crash helmet with the speech. She said, remember, 20 people are seriously hurt riding motorcycles on Phuket every day. I know, babe, I answered, fiddling with the buttons on my jacket. And somebody on this island dies on a motorcycle every single day. I know, I said, drawing circles in the dust with the toe of my shoe. And you don't carry insurance. Wheelie can be a remarkably persuasive speaker, and sometimes I hate that about her. Okay, I whined, taking the helmet and putting it on. There must be teams of engineers in Japan who spend all day thinking of ways to improve a helmet's ability to scoop up every flying insect within 10 yards and deliver them straight into the driver's ears. But it's not the bugs in my ears that make me hate helmets, or their tendency to make my head sweat and itch. It's not even that they hinder my view and my hearing. It's the fact that wearing a motorcycle helmet tells the world that you're afraid. And the old Steve Rosse, the one who gave up his friends and family and career to come ride a motorcycle on Phuket, wasn't afraid of anything. True. Dumbass. The new Steve Rosse, who has seen the bodies lying on the pavement covered with newspapers, is afraid. I would imagine it's much more than one a day now dying on Phuket. One a week dies in the surf. One tourist a week dies in the surf. I imagine 2 or 3 tourists every week die on motorcycles on Phuket now. And helmets are required by law now. They were not back then. So I plodded along on my way to Patong at a sane speed, sober and intending to stay that way, with 2 kilograms of plastic and fiberglass wrapped around my noggin and proclaiming to the world that Steve Rosse is a coward. I shuddered to think what the old Steve would have thought of this. Wearing helmets, making up excuses to go see my friends. he would not have approved. Yeah, but as we have established, that old Steve was an asshole. I stopped off in Caron and shot a game of 8-ball with my friend Eric. He told me that in low season, he'd be happy to give me a special rate on a short-time room in his guest house some Friday. I said, right, like I could really walk down a public sidewalk with a pro on my arm just a few miles from where we lie, her antennae, fine-tuned by an hour's meditation and gossip, was making herself a late-night snack in a kitchen full of sharp cutting implements. But I appreciated his generosity. I know what rooms go for around the Caron Circle, even in low season. I paid for the games, as I always do, since I always lose, and I jammed the hated helmet down over my ears for the last mountain road into Patong. I observed all posted speed limits and surrendered the right-of-way to every pedestrian until I parked in front of the Peppermint Disco at the end of Soy Bangla. Wide Wally was having coffee at one of the cafe tables on the sidewalk, so I joined him. After Wally and I finished our coffees, we walked down Soy Bangla, and the street was like an expat reunion. My wife isn't the only one who allows her husband a Friday night out. We had a beer with Phil and Peter, watched a Sri Lankan rap group perform on MTV from Hong Kong with Larry and Frank, ate some strudel with Jurgen 1 and Jurgen 2, and we watched a chained gibbon maul a midshipman from the USS Iowa with Mats. We expats like to think that we lead lives of romance and intrigue, but the truth is that as we move up and down Patong's Beach Road on our Friday nights, bragging and gossiping and making fun of the tourists, our behavior is not far removed from a group of teenage boys in a suburban mall on a Saturday afternoon. Wally and I walked in the street to avoid the crowds. There were taxis and motorcycles coming up behind us, but I wasn't worried. Walking next to Wally when he's wearing one of his silk luau shirts is like walking next to a float in the Mardi Gras parade. Nobody's ever going to run over Wide Wally because they didn't see him. We turned up Soy Bangla, headed for Jugs A Go-Go, where we traditionally meet Doug and Carl to finish our Friday nights. We walked slowly as we were playing Spot the Transvestite, and Wally asked, "Have you seen the show at the Velvet Underground? Features live goldfish." "Nah," I answered. "They charge 120 baht for a Coke in there. If I'm going to pay 120 baht for a Coke, what's the point of being on the wagon?" Wide Wally thought about that for a minute, going through a crowd of Chinese package tourists like a whale through a school of tuna, before saying, "Can you imagine seeing a show like that back in the city and complaining because you had to pay $2. The city to which he referred is New York City, of course. And suddenly, Wally and I were reminiscing like a couple of old troopers. We do this sometimes. We feed off each other's homesickness. All he had to do was mention the city and we were off. Me asking, "Hey, you remember the strawberry cheesecake at Junior's Deli on Flatbush Avenue?" Wally came back with, "What about the Blintzes at Katz's on Houston Street?" And that fast, we were half a world and at least a decade away from Soy Bangla. The street we walked was lined with crummy bars and Indian tailor shops. But in our heads, we were strolling Central Park West, past the Museum of Natural History. We got to Jugs and Jim the doorman greeted us, reminding us of the doorman at the Oak Bar and the Plaza Hotel. Going up the stairs, we were climbing the D-train platform at Coney Island. At the bar, Jim's brother Jem gave us a beer and a Coke without being asked, without needing to be asked. And I was so into my rap with Wally that all I noticed about the familiar place was the music. Someday I'm going to buy a bar just so I can go in every night and turn down the damn volume. I had to lean into Wally to hear him and shout to be heard. But it was worth the effort to revisit Little Italy and Chinatown and those parts of Harlem that were safe to visit. We rode the sentimental subway for about 10 more minutes before Wally noticed Doug and Carl sitting a ways down the bar. They'd been there unnoticed by us the whole time. Saying, "Come on," and taking his beer, Wally hurried to grab 2 empty stools next to them. Suddenly I was alone. And without Wally's bulk to anchor me there, I came zinging back on some mental bungee cord from New York to land wham in Jugs. I looked around, a little stunned, and realized that for 10 minutes, I'd been standing in a room with dozens of girls who, with the right stylist and photographer, could grace magazine covers, but who were instead dancing provocatively on top of the bar in knockoff French lingerie, and they were all just dying to meet me. And what had I been doing for those 10 minutes? Swapping bittersweet memories with Jackie Gleason's evil twin. That's what I'd been doing. The old Steve. The one who ate cheesecake at Junior's on Flatbush. He would have noticed those girls the moment he walked in. The new Steve, who eats noodles on Soy Bangla, was bored and sleepy and irritated that I'd lost my cigarette lighter somewhere. I said goodbye to Wally and Doug and Carl, and I left. I got on my bike and I put on my helmet and I started for home. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning when I came to the long hill outside of Kata. And I could see the road stretching down and out in front of me, straight as a ruler, for 3 moonlit kilometers and absolutely empty of traffic. I stopped the bike at the crest of the hill. I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Then I took off my helmet. I clipped it on the back of the bike. I buttoned my jacket. I revved up. I popped the clutch. My old Yamaha plow horse stood up on his hind legs like a colt and galloped down that hill. I climbed the gearbox, and for once, I wished I had one of those bikes that teenagers like to ride. The waspy kind that can be heard shifting into high gear by people on boats wallowing in gales off Singapore. The geometrical rows of rubber trees made psychedelic patterns in my peripheral vision, and the wobble in my front wheel smoothed itself out when I hit 130 kph. The needle on my speedometer topped out at 150 as I passed the shooting range, but I could feel I was still accelerating. My eyes were watering and my teeth were chattering, and I had the throttle twisted so high my wrist hurt. And when my headlight picked out the stop sign at the traffic circle on Shillong, I stood up on the brake pedal, laying rubber down over 50 meters of the broken yellow line in the middle of the road. I came to rest just in front of the stop sign. The bike turned slightly to the left, but still upright, myself gasping and shivering, but still alive. I relished the smell of burnt oil and rubber for a minute, surrounded by silence except for the ticking of my muffler as it cooled. Finally, I put my helmet back on, thinking about the girls who cashier at the Kmart on the Circle, oohing and awing over my skid mark when they came to open up in a couple of hours. I looked both ways around the empty traffic circle, pulled out, and drove home at a sedate 60 kilometers per hour. Those 3 kilometers of danger in the rubber plantation almost made up for the lost 10 minutes of desire back at Jugs, and for years of the civilizing influence of my wife. Those 3 kilometers were a gift from the old Steve to the new, as unexpected and as welcome as a postcard from New York City. Wow. Oh, so much has changed, hasn't it? The That road from Kata going to the traffic circle, the Chalang Hayak, the 5-way traffic circle, that road today, you won't find that road empty any time of the day or night. 24 hours a day, that road is packed with traffic. All right, listen, it is 7:20, and the boys are starting to come down the road on their waspy motorcycles, headed for the Voc-Tech college down the road. I'm going to stop this long enough to run across the house and shut the front door, and then I'm going to come back. I'll be right back. Hang on. All right. I dump a bunch of honey in my coffee in the morning. I probably shouldn't. If I'm going to read, it gums up the cords. What are you going to do? All right. This one's called Homeboy. All right. Honest God, this is it. We're really starting now. In 1972, Sergeant Shoichi Yokoi of the Japanese Imperial Army, aged 56, was found trapping fish in a river on Tolofo Mountain on the island of Guam. He'd been hiding on the mountain since the end of World War II, a total of 28 years. He'd spent that whole time in a cave, coming out only at night to hunt for food. He had no books, newspapers, TV, radio, pen, or paper in all that time. At his first press conference from his hospital bed, Yokoi said, "I would like to be reunited with my family," and then go up on a mountain and meditate for a long time. Since he just spent 28 years meditating on a mountain, we may infer from this that all he missed in that whole time was his family. I thought of this one afternoon as I sat in the yard at Pota's house. Pota, Grandpa. A reunion at Pota's house resembles a refugee scene from The Last Emperor. Hundreds of people of all ages, from ancient to infant, camp on mats and blankets and stools and chairs in every room and across half the yard of the century-old teak house. If one member of the clan falls ill with anything from diaper rash to Alzheimer's, his or her recovery is the responsibility of every other member. Whether it's Pota himself, dictating his mother's recipe for menstrual cramp relief tea, or 6-year-old Gop holding a tissue to 4-year-old Noi's nose and saying, "blow." Everybody looks out for everybody else. Wilai and I celebrate the Songkran holidays every year at Pota's house in Nakhon Si Thammarat. Wilai has to pull a few strings to get the days off from her hotel. April's a very busy time for Phuket public relations managers. But avoiding the sad spectacle that is Phuket at Songkran makes the bowing and scraping worthwhile. Very few people on the island are natives, still true. Most have come from other provinces looking for work, and the few that have to remain on the job over the holidays wear their homesickness like a dirty bathrobe. Normally, gentle waiters slam your food down on the table with a grunt, and receptionists in even the finest hotels greet guests with, "What do you want?" The bar girls are surly and sad. The tourists don't know what Songkran is all about, and the expats don't care. The spiritual dimensions of the holiday have become lost or washed away under the frenzy of throwing buckets of water at strangers. But since most municipal governments turn off the water at noon, on Phuket, Songkran lasts only one morning, and everybody's dry and depressed by lunchtime. Now, I think they've learned their lesson. I think now Songkran just goes on for days, at least on Soi Bangla. I think they've learned, well, probably they got a bigger reservoir by now. But I think the powers that be have learned the tourists like that shit. They like throwing water and having water thrown at them. So now I suppose it's very different Songkran on Phuket. But the fact that you can't find somebody born on Phuket anymore, I think is more true now than it was then. Everybody's either from Nepal or Burma or Cambodia or Laos or Russia or wherever, China. You can't buy a souvenir ashtray that says Phuket from someone who was born and raised on Phuket. You just can't find them. They sold their land to Club Med a long time ago and moved to a condo in Bangkok. There's no more Chao Kok, no more island people on Phuket. So it's a bus ride for Wilai and me. This was before we had kids. And 3 days of soggy underwear and baby powder sludge behind our ears with the folks on Pota's farm. Last year, like most years, I spent my time drinking with the menfolk, sitting under a big old bow tree. The male members of Mem's family are loosely divided into two groups, which I call the good guys and the bad guys. The good guys carry guns. They wear 1, 2, or 3 stars on their shoulders, and they receive commendations from provincial governments. The bad guys carry guns, wear mirrored sunglasses even at night, and have no visible means of support, yet they throw money around at Songkran like it's water. Both of these armed camps come together under Pota's bow tree in perfect peace and harmony, and happily both factions like me. I'll let you know, I'm not teetotal, but I don't drink for recreation. I don't drink alcohol. I smoke weed. I don't drink alcohol. But the editor said, Steve, making a point that you don't drink alcohol is a turnoff to many of our readers. Because there's nothing, you don't want to be the only guy at the party not drinking, right? You're a big buzzkill. You're a downer. Nobody wants you there. So I will say things in this like I was drinking with the menfolk. Well, I'd be having a Coke, and chain smoking Krong tips and paying for all the drinks because I'm the farang under the tree. So I'm paying for all the drinks and I was fine with that. But I don't drink. The good guys, back to the story, we now return to our regularly scheduled program. The good guys acknowledge Ko Niao as their leader. Ko Niao is a naval commander with 500 men in his boats. The bad guys render allegiance to Na Tud. Na Tud is a businessman from Ranong, and the man to see if you've got a few dozen VCRs you'd like to trade for some uncut sapphires or teak logs from Burma. During the time they stay under the corrugated steel roof at Potas, these two groups of Nakrang and Karachakan call off the dogs of war and bring on the Johnny Walker bottles of peace. Their diplomatic conference table is one of those molded cement things that painted to look like wood if only wood was grained in fluorescent orange. These things are rock hard and impossible to move around, and they seem ridiculous to anyone who has no experience of what a single year of tropical weather can do to aluminum and plastic lawn furniture. The morning of the first day, the women place bowls of peanuts and dried shrimp on the table and see to it that those bowls never go empty. The men see to it themselves that the bowls are never lonely for the company of a bottle and a sweaty ice bucket leaving puddles on the day-glow knotty pine. Na Tud and Ko Niao sit opposite each other. Na Tud and Ko Niao. Go Niao. That's P, elder brother in Southern Thai. Go. Don't confuse it with Gu. A very rude expression. Na Tud and Ko Niao sit opposite each other, flanked by a dozen or so of their senior lieutenants, jammed hip to hip on the 4 concrete benches, and a shifting mix of the younger bucks sitting on buckets or squatting on their heels in the shade of the huge old tree. Children toddle in and out of the group, showing off fresh scrapes and bruises or squishy wildlife captured under rocks. It's not unusual to see the child of a customs inspector seated in the lap of a smuggler, or the son of a school superintendent receive his first lesson in football from the manager of a sing-a-song bar in Surat Thani. When I first joined the family, I was always invited to sit at the table between the two mandarins, kind of like a UN observer. But since that meant that some other warlord lost face by having to sit on a lard can with the teenagers, now I take a folding camp stool with me and sit against the rough old bole of the tree. I know how long I've been in the timeless world of Nakhon by counting the number of soggy Marlboro butts under that tree. The kids' games of hide and seek take them over every inch of the 9-rai compound, but never into the weeds behind the pigsty, because everybody knows that's where the men go to pee. When I get tired of the endless discussion of sports and politics around the cement table, I duck into Pota's sanctum, a living room decorated with massive pictures of the royal family and a Buddha shrine sporting 20 icons, most of them still wrapped in dusty cellophane. The room smells of 100 years of incense and moist diapers, and Pota reclines on his sofa, attended by his favorite daughters-in-law, untouchable, except by the legion of infants who climb all over him like he was an 86-year-old jungle gym. Pota lives on that sofa, alternately napping and waking, carving betel nuts and teasing the kids if awake and curling up in the fetal position when he's asleep. Though physically he's very frail, mentally he's still sharp as a tack, and he watches everything with bright bird eyes. I'm always reminded of my own grandfather when I see Pota. Over the years, Pota has told me a little of his life story. He's told me about how he was educated in the temple as a young man, about the monk who would sit like a rock in his orange robes and make his students chant the Dharma over and over and over until they got it right. My grandpa used to tell me stories too, how his early education was also in a temple, though his teacher was a rabbi who wore a long black coat, a long black beard, and hit his students with a long black stick if they didn't recite the Torah to his satisfaction. Pota went to Bangkok at the age of 13 to continue his education in a real school. My grandpa went to America at the same age in the cargo hold of a cattle boat to avoid radical fluctuations in the Lithuanian socio-political scene. Pota says that he lived on one egg and a handful of rice a day while he was studying in Bangkok, and to this day he avoids eating eggs. My grandpa swore he'd never look at a cow again after his transatlantic passage. Then he found the only job an uneducated immigrant could get was in the slaughterhouses. He spent the next 40 years carving up cow carcasses, and he ended his career as the recording secretary for the Los Angeles local of the Meatpackers Union. One morning, early in my marriage with Mem, Pota stopped me on the way to the outhouse. He held out a roll of toilet paper to me, and he winked. "I know Farah," he said, in crystal clear Bangkok Thai. Once in my youth, when I was playing the starving artist in New York City, I met my Zaidi at a cousin's wedding. I hadn't seen him in years. I was shocked by how frail he looked. The man who'd put his son through medical school by carrying sides of beef on his back looked like a garden gnome. He was skinny and weak, and the lump of a pacemaker could be seen under his shirt. But he reached under his chair and he handed me a cardboard box, and inside were a few of his old sweaters. "You'll need these," he said. "It gets cold in New York." Then he winked at me like Pota did outside the bathroom. "I didn't give your cousins any, because I knew they wouldn't need them." He wasn't saying, "You're a bum, get a job like your cousins." He was saying, I know you. I know how you're different, how how you are unique. And I've put some thought into your comfort. I'm 86, I've been around the block, and I know what you're going through. That's what Bautista was saying to me with his role of softy. He was telling me that he had accepted me as family and that my welfare was now his responsibility. Despite the differences in time and space, I think that Bautista is what Zadie would have been if he'd been allowed to stay in Lithuania. And Zadie was what Bautista would have been if the Cossacks had chased him all the way to Los Angeles. Yeah, Grandpa Carl. Oh, he was a sweetheart. They both were. Family. It's hugely important here. Hugely. You know, a lot of Farang complain, oh, my wife's family, they're always here with their hands out. They're always begging money. Well, yeah, and they'd be doing the same if she'd married an extremely wealthy Thai man. It's the money, dude. It's not the color of your skin. In that family, if you've joined that family, you've joined with the expectation that you are now responsible for the welfare of every other member of that family, even the ones you don't like, even the brother-in-law who is rude to you on purpose. If he needs money, he's got a debt to a thumb breaker, and they're going to hurt him if he doesn't pay. And it's a couple $100 to you. I mean, yeah, you are expected to, and you should expect that you will give him the money to keep his thumbs from being broken. You know, even if you don't like the guy, even if you hate the guy. You know, family. You're expected to take care of family. Oh, all right. I think I may have read this one already on the channel. I'm going to read it again. The French Connection. This is another obituary. Yesterday, and every word of this is true. No poetic license at all. I mean, none of this stuff. That's the rule in creative nonfiction. If you're writing memoir, you cannot make anything up. You cannot add anything. You can leave shit out to create a compelling narrative. And all memoirists do. You know, any autobiography, if I was going to write my autobiography now and include everything, it would take you 68 years to read it. So everybody leaves shit out, but you don't add anything. So in this, there's a couple things I've left out about this man, but that people don't need to know now that he's dead about his private life. But all the good stuff is true. Everything I say about this guy is absolutely true. Or it was what I gleaned from either speaking to the old man or reading the obituaries after his death. The French Connection. Yesterday, some very important people came to Phuket to say goodbye to His Excellency Gerard André, and Officier de la Légion d'Honneur and Commandeur de l'Ordre National du Mérite, medals, war medals. Chief of the French delegation at the Helsinki Conference in 1975, former ambassador of the government of France to Finland and to Thailand, and for the last 20 years, one of the best loved men on Phuket's Kata Beach. No shit, absolutely. I first knew of Gerard André from his introduction to Old Phuket, a Siam Society publication, and just about the only book about this island I've ever found. Yeah, there's probably only 4 or 5 now, and that counts the 5 I've written about Phuket. But over the years, we would meet at various functions, me as part of the press and he as guest of honor. These sorts of things are so small on this island that I could have easily used them as opportunities to cultivate his friendship, except that he scared the hell out of me. Like any old man, he was spindly and frail, but he had these eyes that looked right through you and down to the lint in the bottoms of your pockets. I'm sure he knew about the candy bar I stole from Kresge Supermarket when I was 7 years old. Whenever we met, I would clasp his hand in a sweaty fist, stutter a greeting, and then sidle away, before I said something stupid or tripped over his cane. When Ambassador Andre retired to Phuket 20 years ago, Kata Beach was empty of anything except a local elementary school and some little fishermen's huts. He took a modest house on the bluff where Kun Saman, formerly major domo at the French embassy in Bangkok, would take care of him for the next 2 decades. It was Kun Saman who greeted me when I came to Wat Kata on Tuesday to pay my respects. But it was the waiters from the boathouse who were setting up the tents and the folding chairs, stringing the fluorescent lights and carrying the cases of Coke and Fanta. For the last decade, Ambassador Andre has been a regular VIP guest at the Boathouse, a little hotel and restaurant just down the hill from his house. His palate and his nose made him a welcome advisor to the chef and the sommelier, and his wit made him a welcome guest at any dinner party. But his venerable age and his generous spirit made him even more popular with the waitstaff, especially the waiters who served him. Made him more popular with the staff, especially the waiters who served him at table several times each week. For the last few years, Kun Pignot has worked the evening shifts so he could spend most mornings helping Kun Saman with Ambassador Andre's breakfast. Kun U took him out to sample the new restaurants that spring up on Phuket like mosquitoes after a rain. Kun Chan, who used to be one of the best Thai boxers in southern Thailand, carried his herbal oils up the hill and administered therapeutic massage to the old man's spindly frame almost every day. And for the last week, he's been carrying a tray of coffee and cakes each noon to place before the coffin. Ambassador Andre had been a player on the world stage before most of these guys were born. They were only children when he came to Kata Beach. But in the end, it was Kun Chang Kon, a 28-year-old waiter from Chumphon, who nailed down the coffin lid. And thus, Kun Chang Kon's were the last mortal eyes to ever look upon the face of Gerard Andre. I dropped into Wat Kata for the free lunch every day this week and twice for the free dinner. And there were never many other mourners. Ambassador Andre was 83 years old. Most of his friends and family were either dead or brokering peace. And what with recent events in the capital, the coup of 92, it wasn't a good week for the Pudi to leave Bangkok, almost without exception. The people who kept him company during his last week in Kata Beach wore the blue-striped uniforms of the Boathouse Food and Beverage Department. Among the more than 50 wreaths that lined the Sala were those from General Prem Tinsalunond, former Prime Minister Anand Panyarakun, and His Royal Highness Prince Henrik of Denmark. But it was the waiters from the boathouse who received the wreaths from the florists and hung them on the walls. Kun Pramot, the Muslim sous chef at the boathouse, did not come on the temple grounds, but he stationed himself every day in the parking lot to guard the expensive cars that were parked there, give directions to foreign visitors, and chase away the stray dogs from the buffet tables. It was the boathouse waiters who fed the monks, washed the dishes, lit the incense, strung the blinking Christmas lights over the coffin, greeted the well-wishers, put the red bills in the white envelopes, and put their hands together and prayed for their old friend. Because I wasn't invited, I cannot tell you what the cremation next Saturday will be like. But the invitation says that Monsieur Andre will be carried to the furnace to the strains of Gabriel Fauré Requiem, which will, and here I quote, give a French atmosphere and religious feeling for his last earthly journey. The actual cremation will take place in the evening and will be attended by the family and a limited number of close friends only. I don't know if the boathouse waiters will be included in that limited number. It's really immaterial, since they were already responsible for an entire week of religious feeling in a decidedly Thai atmosphere, which was, after all, the atmosphere in which His Excellency chose to live what he knew would be the last decades of his life. Gerard André was a genuine war hero, a man who walked the halls of power for 3 decades, a man of culture and letters and fine wines. But when his end came, it was the men who raised their families on 9,000 baht a month, the men who carry the trays of dirty dishes and sweep the crumbs from the table, who laid him to rest and watched over his remains. They had long since claimed Gerard André as their own, and it was their incense. They carried their prayers to their gods so that he may go to their heaven, not the heaven of Lourdes or Chartres or Notre Dame, but the heaven of Cotta Beach. Jesus. Oh, Christ almighty. Maybe I should read these first by myself and get all that shit out. Yeah, that last bit was a dig at the guy who was the general manager of the boathouse at that time and my boss. He's the guy who wrote the invitation that was all snooty and snotty. Yeah. Anyway, all right, I'm going to stop here. I hope you're enjoying this, Maddie. I'm enjoying reading them when I'm not weeping like a teenager. Have a great day, and I'll see you in another couple of days. Bye.